Hi, I'm Chris Ippolito, and welcome to Get Coach 360, where I'm documenting my journey from employee to entrepreneur while featuring the coaches that are helping me along the way. Each episode, these coaches provide actionable advice to help me and you, the audience, find more success as entrepreneurs. I invite you to join the journey so we can go and grow together.
Welcome to another episode of Get Coach 360. In this episode, Chris sits down with Scott Aaron, internationally acclaimed and award-winning network marketer, author, podcaster, speaker, and all-around human connection expert. Scott takes us on a deep dive into LinkedIn, sharing the do's and don'ts, how to appropriately build your network and promote, and more. Scott also shares with us his personal struggles along the way and stresses the importance of realizing there is nowhere else to go but forward, and how the closing of one chapter in your life is inevitably the opening of a new one. A lesson Scott learned the hard way by closing one such life chapter, which was heavily influenced by his father in bankruptcy, while also being filled with a renewed excitement for the new chapter to come in pursuit of his own dreams and passions. And, as always, we'll close with Scott sharing his advice for how you can take action now to level up wherever you need it most.
Hi, Scott.
Chris, good to see you.
It is great to have you. Welcome to the Get Coach podcast. I probably say this every episode, but I am genuinely excited for this episode. I don't record episodes unless I'm excited for them. So before we get into what we're going to be talking about, I'd love if you would do us the honor of sharing your story. Where's your journey taking you, beginning to kind of where you're at now?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an honor, a privilege, and I also get really excited when I actually come onto a podcast and the host is actually really excited to hear what I have to say. Not that I've been on other podcasts where they're not, but it's humbling for me to have a host really excited to hear my content. So I just want to share that with you first. So my name is Scott Aaron, originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I now reside in Marlton, New Jersey. For location purposes, if anyone has been to Atlantic City, I'm about 45 minutes west of downtown Atlantic City near the beach. And so I have an interesting background, and I love sharing my story because, Chris, I think you know the adage, people see the glory, but they don't know the story behind it. And I think it's also imperative in being a human connection expert, which I really feel I am. I need to connect to my audience or the listeners to understand how I got to where I am today. So my entrepreneurial journey actually began when I was 18 years old. I just turned 41. So I've been in the entrepreneurial game for 23 years. I tell people that I've been psychologically unemployable since day one. I've never had a boss. I've only worked for myself. I had little odd jobs, going into college and in high school. So how I got introduced to entrepreneurship was a very unorthodox way. I was an athlete, but I was more of kind of like a hippie, free spirit. I used to travel around the country sing a band called Fish. And when I had hair, I had a really big afro, and I was just really enjoying my time. And a lot of that came crashing down with some bad business decisions that my father made. My father was also an entrepreneur, owned various businesses through my childhood. And he actually left partnership of one and started working for someone else in managing physical rehabilitation companies that were, obviously put in different gyms and chiropractic offices. And this was back in 1997, 1998. After my freshman year of college, I was at the University of Pittsburgh. My family was having a barbecue in the backyard. It was just myself, my sister, and my parents. And my father said, "Listen, I need to share some information with you guys." He said, I'm leaving the company I've been working for, and I'm going to be buying a gym, a fitness club in downtown Philadelphia. Now, that wasn't really strange to me because my father, still to this day, he'll be 68 in December. He is actually a world record holder in the bench press, in the raw bench press. So he doesn't use equipment. He actually was ranked number 1 in the world in the 65 to 69 age category at his weight. So it wasn't, he was always in the bodybuilding. He was always in the lifting. So it wasn't like, oh my God, you're going to buy a gym. It kind of seemed normal. What he followed up with was a little bit out of the ordinary. He said, well, the reason why I am leaving the company is because they are under investigation by the federal government, and I am also being investigated. And there is the chance that if everything goes down the way that the picture was painted to me it could, I may be on house arrest for a few months. So my dad left that company. He opened the gym. 6 months goes by, and we are at my dad's sentencing. He pled guilty to kind of lessen the charges. And just to make a long story short, it wasn't house arrest. He was actually sentenced to 24 to 36 months in federal prison. And this didn't mean that the gym was my dad's. This meant the gym was going to be mine. And I think my dad kind of knew that. And at 18 and a half years old, just before I turned 19, I was handed over the keys to this gym. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to manage anything, let alone myself. And now I was kind of thrown into the lion's den, so to speak. And, you know, someone asked me the other day, do you think it hurt you or helped you being so young when this happened? And it absolutely helped me.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what an awesome opportunity at such a young age when you've got time on your hands to like make mistakes, really.
It was that, plus I was at that age, Chris, where, you know, you want to make your family proud, right? So there's no like, oh, woe is me. I wasn't like complaining, you know. There was definitely some resentment and anger that was building up over the years, but I took it head on. And in the 2.5 years that my father was away, I grew the gym from about 300 members to just about 1,200. In that time period, I also got my certification in sports nutrition and personal training. So I myself became embedded in the industry, became a very successful personal trainer. One gym turned to 2 gyms. And in 2003, we actually sold both of them to another family for $1 million. So at 24 years old, I became a millionaire. I became just trained for the next year, and my father got the itch again to open up another gym. So in 2004, we opened up our third and final gym on the outskirts of Philadelphia. But with everything that happened years prior, my parents' credit was bottomed out. So everything had to be financed in my name when we opened up this gym, which I didn't understand and didn't know what that meant. But financially, I did 3 years later when I found myself in $1.5 million of liability debt. So literally within 4 years, I went from a millionaire to being over $1 million in the hole. So I always tell people that you're always going to be faced with obstacles. You're always going to be faced with things that you're going to have to overcome. And what I can tell you is that all of those bumps and bruises and scrapes and cuts that we take, it just makes us stronger. Now, I was able to slowly crawl out of that financial hole, but on a personal level, between 2009 and 2015, I was married and divorced twice. So I had a lot of emotional maturity to do. I became more emotionally mature. I became more emotionally aware. I don't regret either of those relationships. My second relationship landed me one of the greatest gifts that's ever been given to me. We were talking about this in the pre-show, my 7-year-old little boy, Taylor. But also it gave me the emotional maturity to attract the woman of my dreams into my life. My soon-to-be wife, Nancy, we're getting married in a few months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I learned a lot about myself, but here was the big turning point. In 2013, I was introduced to network marketing. Now, a lot of people may be listening to this and they're like, oh, one of those Ponzi schemes, one of those pyramids, one of those get rich quick things. Listen, people can think whatever they want. Because like I mentioned earlier, I was psychologically unemployable. I knew the power of multiple streams of income. And here's how it happened, Chris. A friend of mine reached out to me and he said, "Hey, haven't been to your new gym. Would love to come up and work out." I said, "Absolutely. Come on, let's catch a workout." And he was just asking what I was doing. And I told him, still running my, my nutrition business and my personal training in the gym. And he asked me a really interesting question. He said to me, "If you got sick or injured where you physically could not train people, what would you do for income?" And when I mean that was like one of the biggest mirror turning moments of my life, that was it. Because I realized at that point that I had done one of the most costly things that any entrepreneur can do, and that is put all their eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized at that point that I needed to diversify my business. I remember reading somewhere that the average millionaire had 4 to 6 streams of income. I had one. I was one illness. I was one injury away from losing everything. So I was open. I said yes to the opportunity. I dove in head first. And between 2013 and 2017, over a 4.5-year period, I earned close to $400,000 of income. And I learned a lot from that experience. Number one, I truly understood that it was a personal development journey with a compensation plan attached to it. So what I mean by that is the more work I did on myself, the more money I started to make.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of quantify how much personal development I did, prior to picking up the first few books that I did in 2013, the last book I had read was the first Harry Potter. That's so just to date how long it had been since I read a book, it was that long. But just as well as I do, when that entrepreneurial personal development spark is lit, it's not going out.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to consume as much as you can. You're on YouTube listening to Les Brown motivational videos. You're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, you're running out of highlighters because you're highlighting so much in your books. You feel like a kid again. You feel you're learning something, you're tapping into an area of your life that it's always been there. You just didn't turn over that rock yet. Now, as I exited my second marriage, a couple years prior to the success really hitting, it was 2015. And I was at a personal development event. And what people need to understand when you're building your personal brand and when you're really building a network, back in the day, I'll put that in quotations, everybody was using Facebook. That was the jam. You were on Facebook, you were promoting your business. You didn't have a Facebook business page. You just blasted out what you did. And you know what? It was an open market. I mean, the engagement was insane. So for the first few years of my business, I grew it organically through Facebook, warm market, extended market. And then at around 2014, 2015, Facebook came to a screeching halt. Something changed. And I wasn't getting the engagement I was getting before. I was still working really hard. I was still succeeding, but people just weren't engaging with the stuff that I was doing. And a couple things happened. Number one, I remember one of my first mentors, Susan Sly, saying to me, she said, "Scott, listen, you need to wake up each day, look yourself in the mirror, and you have to ask yourself one question. How am I going to connect with myself today?" And it was another big aha moment. I realized if I really wanted to build the best business, I wanted to build the best brand, I had to connect with myself, the business version of myself, other trainers, other sports nutritionists, other gym owners, other small business owners, people that I could have a relatable conversation with, which they were out of my war market. We didn't have any other connecting point outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't find that on Facebook. And I was sitting in this personal development event, And the leader of the event called some of these people up on stage. And it was basically going over the law of conversation. And for those that don't know what the law of conversation is, the more people that you speak to, the more yeses you're going to get, the better of a business and a brand you're going to build. You can't talk to 10 people and expect to have $1 million business. You got to work it just like a muscle. So all these people were up there and they were writing all of these numbers of how many conversations they had to have to earn the money and to create the impact that they were creating. And the smallest number I saw was 7,000 conversations.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And I said to myself, well, I'm in trouble, because you're only allowed 5,000 friends on Facebook. And more than half of them want nothing to do with what you're doing business-wise, because they're not on there for business. They're on there for social networking. They're on there for social entertainment. At the very same time, everything is so coincidental. At the very same time, I was in the middle of reading a book called Go for No. It's a book by Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton. Andrea has become a really good friend of mine. It's the #1 sales book probably ever written. They've sold close to 1 million copies. And the cover is what got me. On the cover of the book, it says, yes is the destination, but no is how you will get there. Something clicked. I said, if I really want to succeed in business, if I really want to grow a great business, I want to leave a lasting legacy, if I want to impact a lot of people, I need to have a hell of a lot more conversations. And I was reading this book and it was talking about your failure quotient. Fail more often, fail faster. Get your no's, because the no's open the doors to the yeses. Don't have a goal for yeses each week. Have a goal for how many no's you're going to hear this week. Because if you set a goal for 25 no's a week, there will be yeses that show up along the way. And then I remember LinkedIn. And I originally had signed up in 2009, did nothing with it, as most people did when they signed up for LinkedIn. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners right now. They're like, yep, haven't blown the dust off of that in about 7 years. So I got on there and I was reading some statistics on the avatar, the average user of LinkedIn, 30 to 55 years old. They make anywhere between $75,000 to $100,000 a year or more, and you're allowed 30,000 organic connections. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at Facebook and Instagram, where Facebook, the average age, and Instagram is 18 to 29 with a yearly income of $30,000 a year or less. I was putting all the pieces of this invisible puzzle together. I'm like, okay, I need to dig into this. So in 2015, I started to work LinkedIn. Self-taught, I changed my profile around. I started messaging people that were just like me, other trainers, other nutritionists, other gym owners, and people started responding back. Yeah, would love to hop on a call. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I started having 5 calls a week, 10 calls a week, 30 calls a week. Still to this day, Chris, I have at least 25 calls every single week. And my business started to grow. So I reached out to a friend of mine, my good buddy, Joe Lonzo. And I said, Joey, listen, you got to get on LinkedIn. I said that this is a gold mine. This could change your business. I want you to do A, B, and C. So he did. A week later, he texted me and he said, call me. So I called him and I said, what's up? And he goes, dude, whatever you're doing, it really works.
What were some of the results he got?
He had 14 calls booked after the first week.
Oh, geez. That's pretty good.
So he said, you should be teaching this. He goes, you got something here. So about 4 months later, it was February of 2016, I was on a podcast, and it was my first business coach. And at this point, it wasn't like a traditional podcast like this. It was it's when people still had like live dial calls. So you would call, conferencecalling.com, and you would punch in the code and people could listen in and say hi. And I was going over all the stuff that I had learned about LinkedIn over the last 6 months. And I got off that call and I went on to Facebook, and I had 8 inboxes of people that wanted to hire me. And I'm like, what do they want to hire me for? And I opened up each one and it said, can you teach me LinkedIn? Can you teach me LinkedIn? I didn't have a website. I scrounged that weekend and I filmed myself on Zoom. I downloaded a free account and I recorded some videos, started selling them, and that was the birth of my business. Now, around the same time, I had uncovered a document from my gym, because I still had my gym at this point, and it was bleeding at this point. The building was falling apart. My landlords had no money to fix it. I was losing about $2,000 a month. The income that my new coaching practice and my network marketing business were basically getting funneled into this just to cover my payroll. And my overhead was like $19,000 a month. And I found this document, and it was the lease of the gym. And I found out that I was the guarantor. And for those that don't know what that means, when you own a business and you're the personal guarantor of the lease, you are then financially responsible for every dollar that's owed on that lease, whether the gym survives or not. So I had a meeting with my business attorney, and I said, listen, I need to make some sort of change. And Chris, just to let you know, this was my father's dream. The gyms were not my dream. I made the best of the situation. And my business attorney looked at all the paperwork and he said, listen, you have 2 options. He goes, you can ride this out and see what happens, or you can file for personal bankruptcy. And when I heard the word personal bankruptcy, I didn't hear your life is over. I heard your life is about to begin.
Right.
Because this was going to be my opportunity. The first time in the last 16 years that I was going to be able to wake up every single day and live life on my own terms and do what I wanted to do. So on July 1st of 2016, almost 4 years ago, I filed for personal bankruptcy. The end of that month of July, closed the gym, locked the door, turned the lights off, and I never went back. So on August 1st of 2016 is when I truly started living life on my own terms. And the reflection of that has been the success of my 2 best-selling books, my podcast, my thriving coaching practice, and the impact that I'm now having on those around me, helping people believe and give them hope that there are other ways to build your business and your brand and your impact, which leads to your bank account growing outside of Facebook and Instagram. And that's why I'm so passionate about LinkedIn, because I don't just teach LinkedIn. I teach the art of human connection, which is the #1 business building tool that we all possess. We're just not using it, and I'm teaching people how.
Yeah, there's so many things about that story that I love, because when you had mentioned that your personal development, and the more you did, basically the more success that you started seeing, I kind of felt the same way when I really went on my personal journey of really investing in myself. Was I guess I did see more financial success. I didn't even really think about it, but it wasn't like astronomical, but my income was starting to climb. But what was the biggest thing that I noticed was just my mindset and the shift that I had, and the success, because I think success is a very broad term. It doesn't always have to be financial, but the success I started experiencing in relationships with my spouse, my friends, my parents, stuff like that, it just all of a sudden it shifted quite a bit, and I was just in a happier place. So yeah, I 100% agree. The more you invest in yourself, the more success you're going to have. And success means a lot of different things.
Success it means something different to each person. I quantify success along the same lines of impact. Sometimes success and impact are not seen, they're felt.
Yeah.
You feel successful. You feel someone's impact. And it's someone asked me a few weeks ago, and I love using analogies. They said to me, do you wish you could go back in time and do it all over again and change the way that things were? And I said, absolutely not. I said, do you remember the movie Back to the Future? And they said, yeah. I said, do you remember what happened to Marty's picture the more that the past was starting to change from the actual reality? And they said, yeah, his siblings started to disappear. And I said, exactly. I said, if I went back in time and changed anything about my journey, I wouldn't be talking about this with you right now. Everything sequentially had to happen exactly the way that it did. I have no resentment. I have no anger. I have no hatred about my journey. I am 100% grateful for every aspect of it, because I truly know that one of my superpowers is resiliency. I know for a fact, if I am thrown something that maybe the old Scott, the unpersonally developed Scott, wouldn't know how to handle. But the man that I am today, and I'm still becoming who I am. I'm never going to stop growing. Like, once you're on this journey, you are ever evolving.
Yeah.
I know I can handle any single thing that I am faced with.
Yeah, that was a big shift for me too, realizing that a personal journey is not something you do for, a few months, a year. It's a commitment that you make for the rest of your life, because, and maybe out of the gate that feels daunting, but you kind of said this earlier too. Once you get into it and you see the results and your own success, again, being however you define it, you get hooked on wanting to continuously want to keep investing in yourself and growing. So you actually get to a point where you're like, why would I stop? Like, if I've made this kind of impact in my own life and other people's lives in the 3 years I've been doing it, what is it going to look like in 30 years from now? And we're both not, we're young, right? Like, we've got 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully anyways, left in our lives. And I get excited thinking about, where am I going to be in 30 years from now, of continuously investing in myself, reading these books. And then now with a son, I look at, like, I want to help him in that journey, but have started it much sooner than I did, because I only really started when I was like in my mid 30s. Where could I have been if I had started at a much younger age, right? But like you said, I'm here because of everything I went through, and I wouldn't trade it for a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, when my ex and I split, my son was, he was only about 2 years old, and I started doing gratitude with him every night before we go to bed, and I have been for the last 5 years. Every single night, we read a book, and now myself, my fiance, and him, we read a page, and until we finish a chapter, and we all go around and we say 3 things that we're grateful for. And it's funny, he's gotten into this rhythm, and he says the same thing every single night. He said, he goes, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Nancy. I'm grateful for my mommy. I'm grateful for Daisy, who his dog that passed away. Joy, which was a dog that they fostered, that they gave back in it because they found a home. Mortimer and Ben, which are our dogs. But that's a muscle that's being worked. I mean, his DNA has changed forever. That's ingrained in his DNA. The feeling of gratitude, and I love gratitude. People talk about it all the time. People really don't understand the power of gratitude. It's been physiologically proven that when you are practicing the act of gratitude, you cannot feel any other feeling. You can't feel sad. You can't feel anger. You can't feel hate. When you are thinking about what you are grateful for, it takes over everything. So I truly believe, just like you, I think about, what if I would have started doing personal development, a while ago? I mean, who knows? But that was not my journey. My
Yeah.
journey is right now. Like and just like you said, we have 40, 50, 60 more years. Who knows how long people are going to live by the time we're in our 80s and 90s. But all I know is I have a hunger to just to strive forward and become a better person. Not for me. I have a responsibility to show up every day because there are people out there that look up to me. And that's a gratifying feeling, knowing that people are waiting for my morning mantras. They're waiting for my evening mantras. They're waiting for my Facebook lives. There are people that I give them hope. So there's, with great influence, with great impact comes great responsibility. And I have a responsibility to constantly develop myself to become better for me and all those around me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's servant leadership, right? John Maxwell is an author I've read quite a bit, talks a lot about that, where when you get to a certain level of leadership, what you're doing is you're providing value to other people because it's now your responsibility. And then it just kind of ends up feeding itself in a sense, because you end up becoming a more you develop your leadership as you do more of it. It's an interesting process, but I feel like that's all personal development in itself. The more you do, the better you get, the more you can help, the more you help, the better you get. And it's a beautiful cycle. And unlike the downward spiral that a lot of us can find ourselves. And it sounds like you've gone through that. I've gone through it myself, and most people do. And it is tough. And a lot of people, I feel like right now, when we're talking right now is the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are feeling like they're in this downward spiral. But, I feel for them, because those are the people that it's like, I want to reach out and be like, hey, like, I've been there. I know what you're going through. Our journey looks different, but I feel the same way you do, as far as like when you feel low and whatever those negative feelings are. And it's like, just come with me, like come with me, and I'll take you on a little journey that will hopefully help you out and elevate you. And it sounds like you've got kind of that same spirit in you now, especially with your business.
Yeah. I heard something Simon Sinek say a couple of weeks ago, and he said that every dark tunnel has a light at the end of it. And you have to have hope. We don't know how long this quarantine is going to go for. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to go for. But at the end of all of this, there is something beautiful and amazing waiting for each and every one of us, if you see it that way. Again, it's all about what flows through the 6 inches between your ears. Your mindset will either hurt you or it will either help you. Mm-hmm. And again, this is the time to thrive. And again, this is also the time for empathy, sympathy, community, love, connection, all of that. And I give that out every single day, because you know what? I'm grateful and blessed that I can still continue to work on my business from home without any interruption, as my fiance can. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also very empathetic and sympathetic to those people that have lost their jobs, that don't know where their next dollar is going to come from. And I just continue to just send out as much love and empathy and sympathetic thoughts to all those individuals, because we will get through this. And again, we don't know when, but we will get through it together.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into LinkedIn. Let's dive into that, because I think with everything we've covered so far, if somebody's feeling like they don't know where to go, they're a little stuck, there is a platform out there that allows you to legitimately grow any business that you want, because you can reach and connect with the right kinds of people. So one of the things we talked about in our intro call was on the topic of LinkedIn as well as network marketing, and I had made the comment that the problem with both of them and why sometimes there's a bit of a negative stigma around the use of those business tools is how bad some people use them. All right. So do you want to share some examples of what not to do when if you're going to use LinkedIn to grow your business, to connect with people? What are let's share some of the examples of what not to do. And I think that'll help people realize, okay, as long as I don't do that, I should be okay.
There's a lot of things. It's really funny you said that. There's a lot of things that people should not do, but I'll give you the number one thing. Actually, two things. I'll give you two things. First, never, ever sell or pitch openly in your posts. That will never, ever work. That drives people away. It does not bring them closer to you. And I will explain in a few minutes what you should post on LinkedIn. So number one, do not pitch, do not sell. Number two, and this is even more important, please, and if you guys are using some sort of message bots on LinkedIn, please cancel your service, because all they're doing is sending 17 paragraph long drunkalog messages, pitching and selling people that you've never even spoken to on the phone before. The number one thing that pisses people off on LinkedIn most is when they have someone disingenuinely and inauthentically reach out to them on LinkedIn Messenger. Hey, Chris, great to be connected. Here's a video to check out. Let's schedule a call. You want a free download? Here it is. Click the link. That is not.
I'm laughing because
you've gotten that message.
I've done that. I was that knob on the other end going, I wonder if this will work. And I had some success. I'm not going to lie. That's a lot of it is how I started the podcast. But I learned really quickly when I had accidentally messaged a LinkedIn expert. He was a LinkedIn coach similar to you. And he ripped into me and he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, did you even look at my profile? I'm a LinkedIn coach.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, so I took over the conversation from the automated system I was using. And I said, you're right. Like I owned up to it, some maturity on my part. And like, you're right. And then we ended up having actually a really good back and forth dialogue after the fact. But yeah, I was laughing because I've done that.
We've all been there. I've learned from my mistakes too, because, but I've gotten people like that before. Like, hey, do you need more leads? I'm like, do you not read my profile? I actually am a lead generation specialist in focusing on organic growth. So yeah, same thing. Now, so those are the two biggest no-nos for LinkedIn. And let me throw a third one in there. Please, 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 for the love of God, do not treat LinkedIn like Facebook and Instagram. It is not where your selfies go. It's not where your beautified, picture perfect Instagram photos go. It's nothing. It's not pictures of your dogs and your cats and all that stuff, or your food. It's a business networking platform. Do not treat it like Facebook and Instagram. It's for building your personal business brand, not your personal brand. There's a big difference. So Chris, I would say those are the three biggest no-nos. Now let's cut into, now people are wondering, well, what should I do then? If those are what I shouldn't do, what should I do? So you and I were talking last week, and I call it the layer cake of LinkedIn. And because I want to give people a visual. So I want you guys to envision, that are listening to this, envision a wedding cake. And where the base is the biggest tier, and then it gets smaller. And then at the very top of that cake is that nice, cute little mannequin figurine of the husband and wife that are newly married. Now, I want to take you up from the bottom up of what's most important on LinkedIn, starting at the bottom. And the base of what you need to do on LinkedIn is your profile. That is first and foremost the most important starting point for anyone that is looking to grow their business, their brand, their bank account, and their impact on LinkedIn. When Microsoft bought them out about 4.5 years ago, they took the capabilities that a Google has, that a Bing and a Yahoo, an Amazon, they embedded search engine optimization on every single one of our profiles. So you must have keywords. Now, I'm talking about this a little bit early, but if anyone goes to my website, which I'll talk about at the end, I actually have a free download. It's called 6 Steps to Perfecting Your Profile. This is the mistake. If your profile is not filled out the right way, you don't have the right keywords, the experience section is not clear and there's no descriptions, the about me section is not filled out, your school, your education, your licenses and certification, awards, literally filling every section out, you are invisible. And here's how you'll know you're invisible. On your profile, there's a section right below your profile picture and headline that says your dashboard. If those numbers are low and basically at 0, your profile is not optimized. So again, you want to fill this out top to bottom. You'll start appearing in more searches and you will have more people visiting your page, because here's the amazing thing. People are using LinkedIn right now like a search engine. So if someone wants to connect with other podcast hosts, they're actually using the search engine and they're typing in business podcast host. And then they're connecting with them, then sending them a message, which I'm going to get into. Now, so that's the first part. Second part is what I was just starting to touch on, which is the build of your network. So like I mentioned previously, you're allowed 30,000 connections, which is 6 times larger than Facebook, and it's incredible. I've grown my network organically from 500 connections to nearly 28,000. No tactics at all, like just my system. And again, Chris, you'll see this post, and it goes out. You'll see it at least once a week. Want to know how to grow your network? Number 1, like this post. Number 2, yeah, I know. Makes you want to throw up, right?
I was going to ask you about it. I'm so glad you brought it up. Okay.
Number 2, type I'm open. And number 3, send a connection request to everyone says that they do and watch the magic happen. All right, now.
Hashtag let's connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, or hashtag roll call, where are you from and what do you do? Like,
yeah.
That it's a business platform. That is not organic. You shouldn't have to entice people. I get connections every single day from people because they're seeing my content and they see my profile. So when you're building your network, you have to go back to something that I said earlier in the episode, which is you have to look yourself in the mirror and you have to ask yourself, how am I going to connect with me today? Who's your ideal person? Who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal customer? Who's your ideal avatar? Who is that person that you can relate best to? So your network should be built around people that you can have the most relatable connection to. If you're looking to connect with more podcast hosts, then you search and connect with them. If you're looking for business coaches, you search and connect to them. Now, the third tier is messaging. So I've developed something that I call the magic formula. And it's a 3-step process to genuinely and authentically messaging people, and it gets a very high response rate. One of my coaching clients, I have my clients email me stats just to give me a little heads up, and she sent 31 messages last week. 16 people wrote back that they wanted to talk to her. So here's the magic formula. Here's the infrastructure of it. Step 1, when you message a new connection, number 1, you don't do it right away. You wait 2 or 3 days. I know that sounds weird, but here's why. When people have automation set up, as soon as someone accepts the connection, that autoresponder sends a message out right away. So someone knows that it's not even them messaging, because no one can get a connection accepted that quickly, log on and send a message within 3 seconds. It just doesn't happen that fast. You want it to marinate a little bit, because the more that they know that it's you, the more likely they're going to respond back. Now, here's what you say. Number 1, you state the person's name. Hey, Chris, great to be connected to you. I know it sounds very simple, but saying the person's name letting the person know. And you don't want to use any sort of automation type verbiage. Hey, Chris, great to be connected to you. You want to speak like a human being. The second part is letting the person know why you've connected without trying to sell or pitch them anything. I noticed that you also had a business podcast, as do I. Would love to hear about yours. Share more about mine to see how we can best support each other here on LinkedIn. Now, I've done two things there. Number one, I've bridged the gap between why we should talk. He's got a business podcast. I have a business podcast. So you always have to put yourself in the shoes of the person that's receiving the message. If I was Chris and I saw this person reaching out to me, I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, that makes sense. He's got a podcast. I got a podcast. But I also used the magic word, support.
Mm-hmm.
People want to be supported. When someone reads, this is proven, when someone reads the word support, it triggers an emotional chemical response. Oxytocin is released. So it's ease because they know they're not trying to be sold to. The third part is finishing with something called a CTA, call to action. Questions lead to answers. You have to ASK to GET. You have to ask in order to get. But if I just say, Chris, let me know when's good for you to talk, guess what? You're never going to let me know because I've never asked. But all I have to say is, do you have any time this week or next week for a call? So You state the person's name, reason for reaching out, any time for a call. That's the magic formula. Now, the fourth and final part, which is that little mannequin on the top of that cake, is content. Content is absolutely most important on LinkedIn because now you've built the profile to represent what you do. You started connecting with people that are your mirror image, and now you're reaching out to them in an authentic and genuine way with a message that is connecting to the dots of why you should connect. But half the people are not going to respond. So how do you connect with them? Through your content. Now, there's a couple things you need to know about content. Number one, you need to post at least one piece of content every single day. Not 2 or 3 times like Facebook or Instagram, one piece of content a day. That's it. Now, doesn't matter if it's a post, if it's a video, or an article, just put a piece of content out a day. Number 2, you want to do one of 2 things when you are putting content out there. Number 1, educate. Number 2, inform. You are not selling and telling. You are asking and listening. You are educating your audience on something they may not know. You're informing them in something new that maybe they need to know about. But here's the thing. The mistake that people make, Chris, is when they're on LinkedIn, they typically talk about things that they want to talk about. They don't actually want to talk. They don't talk about what actually people want to hear. You need to put yourself in the shoes of the end user. If I was that person that was following me, what would I want to hear that's going to organically allow me to engage back with them? But here's the other thing. I always, in any of my content, whether it's a video, it's an article, it's a post, I always end with a call to action. How do you feel about human connection? What are you most grateful for? What's your best morning routine? Just a question like that, because here's what that does. It gives me more ammunition to create more content, because now my audience is actually telling me what they want and what they crave and what they want to know more about. So when you engage with your audience the right way, you have this well-oiled machine because your profile is matching what you do. You're building a network around the types of people that you want into it. You're messaging them in a genuine, authentic way. And you're being the authoritative leader. You're being the content creator. You're being the impactor for those people in your network, where you're bringing them closer to you and not pushing them further away by selling and telling, because you're asking and listening.
Right. I have so many questions. Where to go? All right. Let's start with, So I accidentally commented on one of those, hey, let's connect type of posts. I didn't realize it. To be honest, I'd never really seen a lot of them, probably because I was quite intentional with the majority of my connections. But somebody in my network, I think, posted a comment on that post. I saw it, and it was like a congratulatory message, and I was like, oh, cool. I'll say congratulations too. I don't know this person, but they're pretty excited about whatever this was. So I write, hey, congratulations on the milestone. It was something like reaching 9,000 connections. I didn't clue in that that's all they care about. So I all of a sudden I get 6 connection requests. And I'm like, that's weird. I've not, like, why get so many out of the blue? I've not been very active recently. And then I investigated a little bit, and all of a sudden it was this. Now, to summarize the story, it's been about a week since I did this originally. I've now had 37, 38, maybe even 40 connection requests, all because of this one comment. And I was like, should I accept? Should I not? So today I actually was like, you know what, whatever, I'll just accept. My question is, if somebody went down that rabbit hole and is now built, they've got a bunch of connections that they're not real connections. It's a numbers game for a lot of these people. Would you advise them to go back and try and clean up their connections, or you just kind of leave it and you go, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the proper stuff on a go forward basis?
There's 2 trains of thought. Number one, if it was someone like me in the position that I'm in, I mean, I have 260 connection requests sitting in right now because, you're allowed 30,000 connections. So I'm very selective of who I let into my network. I only allow people into my network if I see 2 things. Number one, they could add value to my network by what they do. Or we can add value to each other's networks by doing some sort of collaborative effort creation, or maybe they can utilize my service.
Right.
If I don't see fit for my network, I don't accept. Now, on the flip side of that, the power of the second connection, and for people that don't know what that is, your first connections are your actual connections. Your second connections are your quote unquote friends of friends, like on Facebook.
Yeah.
That person may not be a good connection, but you then are able to tap into that person's network. So there may be a hidden gem or a really great connection within that person's network. So if you're kind of like in the beginning phases of growing your network, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 connections, you don't have to be as picky. As you get to where I am right now, I am definitely more picky right now than I've ever been before, because I really seek out true, meaningful connection and collaboration. So honestly, the only time I would ever withdraw someone's connection, which I have done, is if they are just blowing up my posts with negative, just trash. And I don't have time for negative energy.
Right.
Or energy vampires, or they're on there to try to date me. I will also, I will, which has happened before. I will remove the connection. That's the only real time I do that.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the feedback. Another question was, how are hashtags as valuable on LinkedIn compared to like Instagram and TikTok? Those 2 platforms, I know, like, it's all about the hashtags, but is LinkedIn, would you say it's kind of the same as far as like there is a lot of usability there and functionality?
Absolutely. 2 reasons why. Number one, people actually now follow hashtags on LinkedIn because they actually want to customize their newsfeed. So if they follow certain hashtags, hashtag entrepreneurship, hashtag business, hashtag motivation, they want their news feed filled with just those things. So it weeds out all of just the regular posts.
Right.
Number 2, if you're really impacting your network the right way, you will have what's called a trending post, which means your post is appearing number one in that hashtag, which gives you so much organic visibility, so much organic reach. It's an unbelievable way to get more exposure and actually grow your network even more. So I usually suggest at a minimum 5 hashtags, no more than 10 if you're going to put it in your post. And you can spread it out throughout the content in the body or at the end of it. And and it should be related to the content that you're pushing out.
Okay, cool. And now a very personal one. Would you, because there is the no-nos, right? You were talking about don't sell in your posts and don't like make it about your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, I'm kind of wondering, would promoting the podcast on LinkedIn, is that like, would that fall into that category? Or would you say like that's still like, that's an okay post?
That's an okay post because there's no monetary attachment at the end of it. It's just, you know, I post about my podcast all the time, you know, when I hit 50,000 downloads and, you know, my new episode just released. And no, that's a great way to self-promote, because don't forget, your podcast is doing 2 things. It's educating and it's informing people. It's not selling.
True.
So
that's true.
It falls within that category of doing the right things for your network.
Okay. Yeah, I think the big thing for me that I've been struggling with is because I dropped off significantly. I used to do 1 a day. I was like, that's my goal, 1 a day. And now I'm like 1 a week, which is sharing the podcast of the week. I'm like, nah, I got to do more than that. Like I got to find a way to have just at least, because I typically would do Monday through Friday. There's a good question. Is that kind of how you would suggest most people operate
every day.
On your every day yourself personally?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day.
7 days a week is better, but 5 days would be okay as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's 1 post a day. Everyone listen, if you have time to scroll and troll on social media, you can watch a couple episodes of Schitt's Creek. You can get onto LinkedIn and you can drum up a post for 5 minutes. Like you could do that. It's funny, Chris, I do a lot of talk to text. So if anyone follows me on LinkedIn, I have a lot of long form posts with like emojis. I use my cell phone and I do a ton of talk to text because I don't want to type it out. So if I have like a really good thought, I'll just hit the little speakerphone and I'll just start jamming out. I'll go back and I'll edit, space it out, and I'll post it. So it's easy because I can talk faster than I can type. So if I have a great thought, I'll just talk to text for like 30 seconds and boom, spread it out, and then I'll post it out.
Right. And so I think you had mentioned earlier, you kind of have a blend of text posts, video posts, and you kind of mix it up. Mm-hmm. Is there one that you feel is of higher value? I've heard that video. Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard video is becoming really popular.
Native video. So making sure that you're not linking it to YouTube or anything else, make sure it's native to the platform. So what I typically do is I will record it right on my iPhone, 1.5 to 2.5 minutes. I will then upload it through an app called Mixed Captions, which it's an app. It's like $3.99 and it will auto caption your video. And then I will upload it onto the LinkedIn app, do talk to text to add some verbiage to what the video is about. And I'll upload it and I'll do 2 or 3 of those a week.
How accurate's that transcription app?
I said physiologically.
And it got it?
Got it.
Oh, that's pretty good.
What I've learned about these transcription apps, you have to speak very clear. And so if anyone sees me on video, because when I get fired up, I kind of can talk really fast. But when I'm doing like a regular video, I talk very clear. I take pauses in between what I'm saying, because then it's really easy for it to transcribe. But you can also go back and you can edit something that needs to be edited. So it gives you the proof before it's ready to get posted.
Right. You can clean it up if you need to.
Exactly.
Cool. Let me see. Any questions that on LinkedIn in particular that I haven't asked that you would want to share? Like any hot tips that you feel people need to know?
The one thing that I always tell people is, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Just because you've gotten spammy messages, I mean, there's 600 million people on LinkedIn, and you haven't spoken to all of them. And I'm just being honest. If you really take the time to nurture your network, and you provide value, and you give them something to take away each day, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to treat LinkedIn like a retirement fund, not like a lottery ticket. You know, you just like you said, you got to get back on there. Just deposit something once a day. You know, one piece of content a day. It compounds over time. The success that I'm having in my business is due to one thing: consistency. I've been doing the same thing every day on social media for the last 7 years. I mean, I now have a team, but that's only happened in the last year and a half. But my team, you can ask anybody from my team. You ask them, what's Scott's number one rule? And it's do not touch my social media. That is
really?
No one touch. So anything that people see on my Facebook page, Instagram, or LinkedIn that is coming from me every single day. I don't use a scheduler. I post in real time every single day, because that's how I want to show up, because that's duplicatable. I want to show people that human connection is everything, being present every single day with how you feel, because everything I post about is how I'm feeling. I'm just very aware and very present with how I feel, because I know that I'm not the only one feeling that way. So I want to give that to my audience.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, we've definitely covered a lot. I'd love to hear, I like asking this question at the end of every episode to kind of put a nice bow on things. So with everything that we've talked about, what would be that one piece of advice that you would want to share with the audience to help them level up? Really not necessarily on LinkedIn, because we did cover a lot, but what's that one piece of advice you would want to share with the audience?
Your failures always open the doors to your successes. The more often that you are willing to fail, the more often you're going to figure out how to succeed. It's simple math. You know, success does not happen overnight. You have to think about all the successful people in the world. Do you think they hit it on the first try? No, they had to fail. They had to mess up. They had to learn how to succeed. So as long as you keep going, whether you move forward a millimeter or a mile, you will achieve every single one of your goals. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, that is really, really good advice. I've heard it before. I feel like that's one of those types of things that needs to be repeated literally on a daily basis. I think that should be something of a daily affirmation for most people, is that whatever you're going through, it's part of the journey, but just make sure to have some forward progress. Even like you said, even if it's a tiny, tiny amount, just keep that forward momentum going.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really good. If people wanted to connect with you, Scott, where is the best location for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm very omnipresent on all social media, so you can find me there just by my name. But my website, www.scottaaron.net, it houses my books, my social links, my podcast, free downloads, call scheduler. That's where you can find everything.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll include that and all the other stuff in the show notes for sure. Well, Scott, that was a awesome conversation. I'm so glad you shared the 4 levels there of LinkedIn. I thought there was a lot of value there, and it's really reminded me of what I need to do if I'm going to leverage LinkedIn to help grow the podcast and the business. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure the audience took a ton of value out of it too.
Yeah. So Chris, again, I just really appreciate you and just feel grateful and honored to be here and happy to provide value, and just want to wish you continued success and thank you again for having me.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for listening to Get Coach 360. If you're looking for more information, you can head over to our website, which is getcoach360.com. You'll find the show notes for this and every other episode there. And if getting actionable advice every week from professional coaches is something you want more of, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.